Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my entitled neighbor repeatedly parked his giant trailer on my property and camped on my land without permission. Here is what happened. Subscribe to Ripe on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I have a neighbor that I always saw as a little bit odd. We live in a place where people end up with pretty big areas of land, and while the space makes it possible to not know your neighbors, we all do anyway. She is always just making weird decisions that don't seem to make any sense, like I noticed she once ordered and stored a ton of hay on her property. The thing is that she has no livestock, so the hay just sat there for over a year before it finally ended up getting dumped. The point I want to make is that this woman makes decisions that don't have any logic behind them, and I gave up a long time ago trying to find any logic in her actions. She had bought a camper RV, and I actually thought it meant she was going to go on vacations and maybe give me a break from her. Instead though, it just seemed to sit there for a while until she packed a bag, got into the camper, and drove for about 2 minutes right onto my property. I understand wanting to camp somewhere close to home, but that was ridiculous. I had told her to get off of my property, but she just kept saying that it was her campsite and that I should deal with it. I wanna just note that while it sounds like she was not all there upstairs, she had a total understanding of what she was doing. This was not the first time she had tried to do stuff on my property either. I got the same talk from her that I always did, how I should be a good neighbor and let her do things on my land because it was bigger than hers and I had space that she didn't. If my land was bigger, it really wasn't by much, and I did not want her hanging around on my property. I had called the police on her before, but since she is my neighbor and so close to the property line, they mainly just warn her and just leave. This just fuels her entitled behavior, and she seems to at least once a week move her camper onto my property and use it as her personal little campsite. Honestly, I know that her real reasoning is so she can make a mess and not have to clean it up. Also, she doesn't want to pay to stay at an actual spot for campers, so she just tries and succeeds in using my property for that. I didn't know what to do, and I was playing around with the option of just privately suing her. I had the police reports and even video evidence that she had been on my property. That might only get me a small amount of money, and she would still end up saving by doing this on my property instead of somewhere else she is meant to be. One day was different though, and after I went to bed I noticed that it was pretty loud near the edge of my property. This was where she usually set up camp, but this time was not only very different, but finally over the line. She was having some kind of party where people were dancing to music and getting drunk. I also saw smoke because they had started a bonfire and were cooking over it. I was beyond mad because I knew that whatever part of the ground they had started the fire on was now destroyed and going to be my problem. I wanted to call the cops about the illegal party, and I was going to be more aggressive and demand they do something about the neighbor using my land as her own personal camping grounds. Before I could get to the phone though, I noticed that the smoke was getting bigger. The music had stopped and I heard people making different kinds of noise. I could not see too clearly from where I was, so I went outside and got a little bit closer. It turns out that the smoke was not only coming from the bonfire, but from my actual property. They did a bad job securing where they set the fire, and now it was spreading around my property. People were trying to put out what they could, while I heard another say that they called the fire department to help put it out. Just a side note, that where I live it gets very dry, so a fire like this needs to be put out right away or it would spread. That also means that starting a bonfire in a yard like this is actually a really stupid idea, and while it is not illegal, it will get you a stern talking to. At first, the fire marshal was giving me the lecture before I explained that it was my neighbor who was illegally on my property that started the fire. The police always come here when the fire department is called, so they were also hearing what I was saying. One officer, I guess, had enough of coming out here to listen to how my neighbor kept going onto my property without permission. The fire could have been way worse and burned down my entire house if it was not caught early enough. Or it could have spread the other way towards the trees and really gotten out of control. Neighbor was finally getting what I wanted to happen from day one. She was getting arrested, only now it was not for trespassing alone, it was also for arson. She got taken away saying that she had the right to camp and that it was not arson, because if it was, she would have burned down my whole house. That obviously did not help her case. The next day I noticed that her camper was still there on my property and she was not home, so I could do only one thing that I thought would be great revenge. I called a tow company and told them that there was a camper parked on my property that did not belong to me. They had to come with a special kind of truck that was made for big things like RVs and campers. It was going to be towed away at the expense of Neighbor, and since she was dealing with the police at the station, she could not do anything about it. It turns out the local place where cars get towed to is not actually able to handle something like a camper, so it had to be taken 30 miles away. Much more expensive, but all of this is going to be at the expense of the owner. I finally saw her again later that day after she ended up working things out and getting a ton of fines regarding fire safety. She had to pay thousands of dollars for the fines and pay me for the property damage. She also had to take a fire safety class that I just have a feeling would be long and boring. When she noticed the camper was gone, she started yelling at me and telling me that I stole it and that she was going to sue me for this. I just calmly handed her the info for the towing company and said that it was illegally on my land, so I made sure that it got moved. I have no idea how much a towing cost is for a camper that had to be driven to a special lot 30 miles away. What I can say is that it must have not been worth it because I never did see that camper again. In fact, she stopped coming onto my property in general after that, and I have a feeling they told her to stop trespassing or she was going to get arrested again. And yeah guys, if a bunch of entitled people decided to just start camping on your property, what would you have done? Let us know in the comments, and now let's continue to the next story. This one is titled Revenge on My Awful Business Partner. A little over 10 years ago, when I was a young carpenter, I met a guy who I will call Chad. Because screw Chad. Chad was a new hire by the company I was working for and became my helper. We got along famously, even though he was 10 years older than me, but he did not mind working under a 23-year-old carpenter as an apprentice. Chad and I had worked together for 6 months when he brought up the idea of starting a business together. He figured between the two of us, we could easily run a crew and build houses. After talking it over with my pregnant girlfriend, which is now my wife, we decided that it would be better for me to be an employee but still a 50% partner for tax reasons and insurance purposes. Chad said that was fine with him. So we started laying out who was to take care of certain aspects of the business. Chad was to be the guy to find work, as I look, and still do, way younger than I am, and it does not instill a lot of confidence in the client to think that their framer is 16. Chad was also to take care of payroll, insurance, and any other financial factions. My duties were simple. It was just staff and run the crew and keep on budget, something that came easy to me. I was to be paid an hourly wage as well as 50% of profit after all business expenses. I never took my profit draw as I rolled it back into growing the company. Things were great for about 6 months, the crew was working well together, we had a few houses under our belts and a contract for a 10,000 square foot custom house with multiple outbuildings. Things were great, so Chad has never built a foundation and we usually hired a crew to put the foundation in for us, as like I said, Chad has never built one and I personally hate concrete work. We could not get our normal foundation crew in, so I stepped up and said, F it, I'll do it myself. The company we were building for is one of the best custom home builders around, and doing a good job on this house could mean that we would not have to pound the pavement looking for work, work would be given to us. Perfect arrangement. Until it wasn't. Chad started spending money like it was going out of style. He sold his 2500 Chevy pickup and bought a new Jeep Wrangler. He had the Jeep for about a month before he sunk it in water while 4x4ing, and it caught on fire mysteriously a few days after. He received the insurance payout and bought a brand new Dodge 2500 Power Wagon, which he, in short order, sunk in water within a few weeks again. I never noticed the red flags, as Chad and I rarely spoke face to face. He was the business side and I was the get stuff done side. I finished the foundation and picked up the check from the builder. The builder said that we overbilled him by 25%, but he was happy with the work we, aka I, done, but not to overbill again, as he doesn't like overpaying, as there may not be any money left at the end of the build. I apologized and asked him to cancel the check and issue one for the work actually completed. He agreed to and said, "I am so happy to have honest people working for me. I usually don't pick up the checks, nor did I ever really look at the books, as it was not in the scope of my responsibilities." This prompted me to log onto our corporate account and see that we are so far in the red that we could not afford to buy a red pen, let alone cover payroll. I showed up at Chad's house and tore a strip off of him. He then apologized and promised to top up the account with his personal profit draw money. I go into work on Monday to find the locks on our tool bin had been changed, my name removed from all accounts, and a letter taped to the tool bin stating I was dismissed from my duties for an undisclosed reason. I was furious. I was not aware that as a business partner I could be fired. I found another job quite quickly and tried my best to put it behind me. That is when I found out where the money was going, and that Chad has been slandering my name around town, blaming me for the missing money, as well as a bunch of egregious statements about my work ethic, trade skills, mental stability, and home life. Now I tracked all of our interactions with a simple journal and had backups of the transactions of our business account. I also happened to have backups of all our texts, voicemails, and pictures of everything. So here comes the revenge part. I took the evidence to my father's lawyer, rest in peace, friend, who started a fraud/embezzlement investigation through the CRA, Canadian Revenue Agency, Canada's IRS, and called the insurance provider to make sure they were being paid. They had never received anything. I called the builder whom we were building for and explained what was happening. He told me that Chad had essentially stolen around 30k for payment of work not completed and had broken into their office and stolen another 15k replacement value of equipment and tools. I did what anyone would do. I called the police. The police said they could not help me and said it was a civil case, and the builder said he was not going to sue as Chad had no money and it was not worth the headache. So I called his auto insurance company, sent them all the pictures of his sunk vehicles, text about them, and a short video he sent of him lighting the Jeep on fire. So the insurance company filed charges against Chad and won. Chad is on the hook now for around 130k. I have spent the last 9.5 years telling anyone who will listen about Chad, and I have him essentially blackballed from the carpentry industry around here because it is not slander if it is true. I have also looked up his criminal history as it is public domain every 3 months or so and make a point of showing up at his court proceedings or offering myself as a character reference for the Crown, aka prosecution. So I have gone out of my way to remind Chad that he cannot F me over without repercussions. And no, this does not end here. Years have passed and I am still pissed off. I receive a call from a guy offering me a job. It was the builder that Chad screwed over, not remembering that we know each other after I explained who I was, and this bridge is burned due to Chad and he still offers me the job. Medical, dental, company van, gas card, corporate credit card, I accept his offer. First order of business, find another way to F with Chad. Through the grapevine I find where Chad is living and working. The new boss calls the company Chad is working for and Chad is summarily fired. I get in touch with Chad's landlord, explain how he operates, and Chad is evicted for unpaid rent. He was apparently a couple months behind. I also managed to get his girlfriend's number, call her, and explain what this guy does to people and his extensive criminal history, including but not limited to fraud, identity theft, insurance fraud, his many assaults, and his wanted picture published in the paper. Turns out she is the owner of his truck, primary operator, but he pays the insurance. He cannot insure a vehicle until he pays off what he owes for the fraud. She asks me what she should do, and I say that I'll take care of it. I called the insurance provider, explain what is going on, and for them to tell me he does not even have a license anymore. They void the insurance on his girlfriend's truck after speaking to her and set up a sting with the police. I personally get to be involved as I knew what was going on, so I sit and wait for the day it goes down. I roll up behind the unmarked police cruiser and quickly explain who I am and what my plans are. The police are thinking that they are just waiting to pull him over for driving without a license and no insurance. I said I'm going to call him immediately as soon as I see him. So he comes cruising out and I make the call. He actually picked up the phone to call me a bunch of names and the N-word. And by the way, I'm as white as the fresh fallen snow and promptly gets pulled over. Police issue a ticket for reckless driving, no seatbelt, no license, using a handheld device. During this, the girlfriend pulls up and proceeds to give consent to search her truck. In the truck, they find multiple IDs, stolen credit cards, a couple ATM skimmer machines, and a fake police badge. He was arrested on the spot. So the revenge is over, right? Nope, not yet. The police then ask to search the residence he was living at. He moved into the girlfriend's house after I had evicted him from his own place. In the garage they find a vast collection of stolen tools, a lot of which belonged to the builder I was working for from when he broke into their office, and they were all stupidly still labeled with the company's inventory control stickers. This brought on even more charges and he was remanded to police custody until his trial date. Well, justice is sometimes slow here in Canada, and his trial date was at the time 17 months into the future. Well, yesterday was his trial date, so my boss, who Chad ripped off, Chad's ex-girlfriend, and I attend the hearing, just to see the man squirm. His judgment was 8 years in jail after being granted time and a half for time served, a $100,000 fine, 1,000 hours community services after release, and no possibility of parole. I got to watch him be taken away in chains twice. Never underestimate the fury of a quiet man. And F you, Chad. And yeah guys, that was an absolutely fantastic revenge story, and it couldn't have been done any better. If you have any revenge stories to share of your own, please share them in the comments. And now thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.